AITA for refusing to give my brother's wife access to my child during her recovery. Even though everyone says I'm overreacting, I've been married to my husband, Alex, for 6 years, and we have a 3-year-old son, Ethan. Alex has a younger brother, Matt, who is married to Sarah. Matt and Sarah are nice enough, but Sarah has always had this "I know better than everyone" attitude. She's the type who reads a parenting book once and then lectures everyone else about how they're raising their kids wrong. I've tried to be patient because, well, she's family, but over the years, little things have built up, and I've learned to be cautious around her. A few weeks ago, Sarah had a minor surgery that requires her to stay at home and avoid lifting or doing strenuous activities for about a month. Matt called Alex and mentioned that Sarah wanted to spend more time with Ethan while she recovers. At first, I thought it was harmless. But the moment Alex mentioned that Sarah was expecting to babysit Ethan for several hours a day while she's recovering, my gut went up in full alert mode. I know she wants to help, but I also know how controlling and particular she can be with children, especially mine. I told Alex that I wasn't comfortable letting Sarah babysit Ethan. I explained that even though she's family, I know her style of parenting and how she tends to push her opinions on kids, especially mine. For instance, last Christmas, she tried to convince me that Ethan shouldn't eat sugar at all because she read that it makes children aggressive and refused to put any sweets on the dessert table, even though my husband and I disagree with her interpretation. Another time, she tried to force Ethan to sleep in a crib he had outgrown because she believed all 3-year-olds should be in cribs. These incidents were relatively minor, but they added up for me. Alex was frustrated. He said I was overreacting and that Sarah is his sister-in-law and a nice person who just wanted to help. He argued that she's recovering and it would be a kind gesture to let her spend time with Ethan. I tried to explain that my hesitation wasn't about Sarah's intentions, but about the practical reality of giving her unsupervised access to my child, especially given her past behavior. Alex said I was making it personal, and he started to suggest compromises like letting her watch Ethan for an hour or two while I'm in the house. I agreed to that compromise, thinking it was fair. Sarah came over last weekend, and I stayed in the living room while she was playing with Ethan. Almost immediately, she started giving Ethan unsolicited instructions on how to play with his toys, telling him, "You're holding the block wrong, and that's not how you color inside the lines." Ethan was visibly frustrated and eventually walked away. I calmly asked her to let him explore at his own pace, but she brushed me off and continued giving him directions. That's when I realized that I couldn't just allow her free access because she would overstep boundaries, and I didn't want to cause distress for Ethan. Later, Alex confronted me, saying that I was being rude and selfish, and that Sarah is just excited to spend time with her nephew. He told me that I was creating unnecessary tension and that I should trust her more. I reminded him that my primary concern is Ethan's comfort and that, as his mother, I have the final say over who watches him. Alex stormed off and told me that I was being difficult and that families should support each other, especially during recovery. He also said that if I kept refusing, it would create a rift between me and Sarah, and that I should think about the bigger picture. After this, I didn't change my stance. I offered alternatives like having Sarah come over for supervised visits, video calls with Ethan, or even doing activities together in my presence. I thought this was a fair middle ground, but Alex and some family members started pressuring me, implying that I was being unreasonable and that Sarah would be hurt if she couldn't have solo time with Ethan. The tension escalated when Matt texted me directly, saying, "We just want to see Ethan, and it's not like you're protecting him from danger. She's recovering, and it's a small ask." I tried to reply politely, explaining my concerns and that I wanted Ethan's interactions to be positive and stress-free. Matt responded that I was overreacting and that I'm making things complicated. Now, my parents have also gotten involved, suggesting that I soften and let Sarah babysit, calling me controlling. I'm feeling torn because, on one hand, I understand that Sarah's recovering and probably wants normalcy and interaction. On the other hand, I feel strongly that giving her unsupervised access to Ethan would be a mistake. I don't want to create conflict, but I also don't want to compromise Ethan's well-being or my boundaries as a parent. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to give my brother-in-law's wife solo access to my child during her recovery. even though family is pressuring me to be nicer and understanding. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep creating more great content. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Thanks so much for your support. AITA for refusing to accommodate my sister's emergency at my wedding, even though it caused a huge family rift. I, 29F, have been with my fiancé, Mark, 31M, for 5 years. We finally decided to get married this year after a long engagement because of career and personal reasons. Planning has been a roller coaster, but I've always tried to keep things as fair and drama-free as possible. Mark and I come from two very different families, and mine is particularly complicated. The issue revolves around my younger sister, Lily, 24F. Lily has always been the type to throw tantrums when things don't go her way, but my parents have always coddled her. She's smart and ambitious, but has a habit of dramatizing everything and expecting the world to revolve around her. I love her, but we have a strained relationship because of this. About 2 months before the wedding, Lily called me in a panic. She said she had signed up for an urgent careers seminar that she now couldn't reschedule. According to her, attending the seminar was crucial for her career and could make or break her future. The problem was that the seminar fell on the day of my wedding. She begged me to push the wedding back by at least 2 weeks so she could attend. She even told me she was willing to pay for anything that needed to be rescheduled. I told her straight up that moving the wedding was not an option. We had booked a venue a year in advance, sent out invitations, and coordinated with vendors. Changing the date would have meant losing deposits, upsetting our vendors, and causing logistical chaos for almost everyone. I also reminded her that it's my wedding, not hers, and that she should have checked her schedule before making big plans. Lily did not take this well. She accused me of being selfish and not caring about her career. She said that I was forcing her to choose between her family and her future. I tried to reason with her, saying that attending a career seminar could not be more important than supporting your sister on one of the biggest days of her life. She told me that if I didn't move the wedding, she might not come at all. I felt trapped. I didn't want my wedding to be overshadowed by family drama, but at the same time, I didn't want to be the bad sister. I called my parents to get their advice, and, as expected, they said, maybe you could compromise just this once. It's her future. I told them I couldn't, and that this was not a compromise. It was an entire wedding being moved for one person. They weren't happy, but didn't pressure me further. Fast forward to the wedding day. Lily didn't show up. My parents, who had flown in from out of state, were disappointed but chose to attend anyway. The ceremony itself was beautiful, and Mark and I were incredibly happy, but there was this huge void where my sister should have been. I tried to enjoy the day, but every time someone mentioned family, I could feel the tension. After the wedding, the fallout began. Lily refused to speak to me and has been posting passive-aggressive messages on social media, implying that I ruined her career and don't care about family. My parents are caught in the middle, disappointed in both of us. My other siblings are frustrated with Lily for being dramatic, but also upset with me for not making any effort. I honestly feel like I did the right thing. My wedding is a one-time event, and rescheduling it for my sister's seminar seemed unreasonable. I also think that she could have planned around the wedding, given that she knew the date for months. However, I keep wondering if I handled the situation poorly. Could I have done more to accommodate her without completely changing the wedding? Was I too rigid? I don't want my relationship with my sister to be permanently damaged, but I also don't want to regret not standing my ground. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to move my wedding for my sister's career seminar, even though it caused a huge family rift. AITA for refusing to let my brother-in-law's girlfriend move in with us temporarily, even though my husband thinks I'm overreacting. So, this is going to be long, but I feel like I need to explain all the context because my family is twisting this situation, and I genuinely don't know if I'm being unreasonable. My husband, Mark, and I have been married for 6 years, and we have a 2-bedroom apartment in a medium-sized city. Mark has a younger brother, Jason, who is 28, and he has always been a bit difficult, to put it nicely. Jason recently started dating someone, Emily, who is 25. I met her a handful of times, and honestly, we don't really click. She's very loud, impulsive, and seems to enjoy drama. Mark insists she's a great person, but I just don't have that impression yet. About 2 weeks ago, Jason called Mark in a panic. Apparently, he and Emily got into a fight, and she stormed out of their apartment. Jason was acting frantic, saying that Emily has nowhere to go and he doesn't want her on the streets. That's when he asked if she could stay with us temporarily until they figure things out. Mark, without consulting me first, immediately said yes. I came home from work that evening to find Mark grinning and saying, "Good news. Emily's moving in tomorrow." My jaw basically hit the floor. I tried to explain that this is not okay. Our apartment is not huge. We have a small living room, 2 bedrooms, and 1 bathroom. We have a dog, and my work schedule is unpredictable. We also like our personal space. I told Mark that it would be stressful, and honestly, I don't feel comfortable having someone I barely know living here. Mark said I was overreacting and that it would only be for a week or 2, and besides, we're helping family. I pointed out that Emily isn't family. She's Jason's girlfriend, and I barely know her. Mark said I was being cold and not supportive. I went to bed angry and upset. The next morning, Mark texted Jason and Emily that they could come. I told him again that I was not okay with this and that I wouldn't be able to tolerate her staying here. He said that if I refused, it would cause major family tension and I needed to suck it up for a few days. I reluctantly agreed to let them come in for one night, thinking it would calm everyone down and then we could figure out a compromise. Big mistake. Emily arrived and immediately started making herself at home. She moved our things around, criticized the way we keep our apartment, and even rearranged the pantry because the snacks were all wrong. She then insisted on taking over our living room, claiming she wanted to feel comfortable, and even brought her own bedding to sleep on the couch. I tried to be polite, but I could feel my stress levels skyrocketing. Mark kept saying, "Don't be so uptight. She's just staying a few days." By the end of the first night, I was exhausted and tense, and Emily didn't seem to notice. Over the next few days, things escalated. Emily started using our kitchen constantly, leaving dirty dishes in the sink for hours. She invited friends over without asking. She tried to help me clean, but ended up making more mess. She also spent hours on our Wi-Fi doing who knows what, slowing down my work calls. I tried speaking to Mark again, asking him to set boundaries, but he kept defending her. He said I needed to be the bigger person and that I should think of this as doing a good deed. I told him that it's not a good deed if it's destroying my mental health and that it's temporary. If we wanted to host someone for a week, it should have been someone we trust, not someone I barely know. He accused me of being selfish and controlling. The situation got worse when Emily started commenting on our relationship. She would make passive-aggressive remarks about how I supposedly treat Mark, suggesting I'm too serious or don't appreciate him enough. I confronted her politely but firmly, asking her to respect our home. She laughed and said, "Well, I'm living here now, so I can say what I want." I nearly lost it. I told her to leave immediately. Mark stepped in and tried to calm both of us, but he was clearly frustrated with me for overreacting yet again. After 4 days of this, I finally told Mark that I cannot live like this and that either Emily leaves or I'm staying at my sister's house until the situation is resolved. Mark freaked out, saying I was ruining everything and that Jason and Emily were already feeling bad about having to leave their apartment. I pointed out that their problem isn't mine to solve and that it's unfair to put the burden of someone else's relationship crisis on me. He said I was being dramatic and refused to leave, insisting I needed to handle it like an adult. I was so frustrated that I started packing my things, telling him I would stay elsewhere until Emily left. He shouted that I was breaking the family apart over 1 week. I ended up staying at my sister's for 3 days while Emily stayed in our apartment. During that time, Mark texted me constantly, asking me to come home and be nice. When I finally returned, I set strict boundaries. Emily was allowed in the living room only during specific hours. She had to clean up after herself, and she could not invite anyone over. Mark was furious that I dictated rules in my own home, but I refused to back down. Emily eventually moved back in with Jason after a week, and things have calmed down a bit. The problem is that now Mark's entire family is subtly criticizing me. Jason says I overreacted and made things awkward, and Mark's mom called me cold for not helping. Mark keeps hinting that I should apologize to Emily for making her feel unwelcome. I feel like I stood my ground and enforced boundaries that should have been respected from the start. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother-in-law's girlfriend move in temporarily, even though my husband thinks I'm overreacting. AITA for refusing to let my younger brother move in with me after he got out of prison. I, 32M, have always been the responsible one in my family. I grew up in a small town with my younger brother, Ethan, 27M, who has had a rougher time navigating life. Our parents divorced when we were teenagers, and while I focused on school and sports, Ethan fell into the wrong crowd. Despite our differences, I always tried to support him when I could, even lending him money occasionally when he struggled to pay rent or bills. 2 months ago, Ethan got out of prison after serving a 3-year sentence for burglary. I knew he would need some help adjusting back into society, but I also knew living with me would be a huge challenge. My apartment is small, 2 bedrooms, and I live with my fiancée, Laura, 30F, and our dog. I love Ethan, but I also know his past habits, and I wasn't sure if I could handle the stress of having him live with us. A few days after his release, Ethan called me, asking if he could move in temporarily. He said he had nowhere else to go, and that his parole officer suggested he avoid living alone for a while. He promised he would pay rent and help around the apartment. Laura was immediately uneasy about it. She reminded me that we have our routines, our own space, and that our apartment isn't really set up for another adult. I agreed with her, but I also didn't want to turn Ethan away in his moment of need. I told Ethan that we could help him in other ways. I could help him find a job, give him rides to appointments, and let him store some of his things at our place temporarily, but I couldn't have him living with us full-time. He got upset and accused me of not really being family and of caring more about my precious apartment than my brother's life. I tried to explain that I loved him and wanted to help him succeed, but living together would create tension and potentially harm my relationship with Laura. He left after a heated argument, threatening to figure out on my own, but clearly bitter. A week later, Ethan showed up at my apartment unannounced. He had a small backpack and looked exhausted. He said he couldn't find another place to stay and expected me to do the right thing. Laura and I were home, and she was furious that he had shown up without warning. I told him again that we couldn't accommodate him living here, but he started arguing and pacing around our living room. At this point, I called him out on some of his past behavior: stealing from friends, staying out all night, not paying rent on time, and generally being unreliable. I told him I loved him, but that I couldn't jeopardize our life together. Ethan stormed out, slamming our door, and later sent a barrage of messages calling me selfish and heartless. He even tagged me in a public post on social media, asking why his brother wouldn't help a man trying to turn his life around. I didn't respond. I felt guilty at first, but I also knew that bringing him into our home could lead to fights, resentment, or even legal issues if something went wrong. Since then, family members have started taking sides. My mother says I should let Ethan move in for at least a month to help him transition. My father thinks I'm right to be cautious. Laura says she feels betrayed that my family thinks I'm being cruel. Even some of my friends are divided. Some say I'm enabling bad behavior by giving in. Others say I should help my brother in his time of need. I've been helping Ethan in other ways. I helped him update his resume, drove him to a job interview, and let him temporarily store a few belongings at our place. He recently got a part-time job at a grocery store, and I was proud of him. But he's still angry, and I feel like our relationship is strained. I want to support him, but I also feel like I have to protect my home and my relationship with Laura. I don't know if I overreacted or if I'm justified in setting boundaries. I feel torn because I love my brother, but I also have a life and responsibilities that can't just pause for his reintegration. I know he made mistakes and is trying to do better, but I also have to think about long-term consequences. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my younger brother move in with me after he got out of prison. Character count, 6,547 if you want. I could draft a second, slightly darker version that's closer to the blow-up style stories that hit Reddit front pages, which tends to get even more engagement. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her last-minute guest list change. So this is going to be long, but I feel like I need to give context. My sister, Megan, and I have had a complicated relationship over the years. We're 3 years apart, and growing up, our parents definitely played favorites. Megan was always the golden child, while I was more of the overlooked middle child. I'm 28 now, and she's 31, and while we've had stretches of normal sibling interactions as adults, our relationship has always been a little tense, especially around big events or holidays. A few months ago, Megan got engaged to her fiancé, Ryan, and immediately started planning a fairly large wedding, around 150 people. I was genuinely happy for her. I'm not super close with Ryan, but he seems nice, and Megan deserves happiness. She sent me a save the date about 6 months in advance, which was great. Then, a few weeks ago, she sent out the official invitations. Here's where it gets messy. Megan's wedding was always supposed to be an adults-only event. I'm single, but I don't have children, so I was fine with that. I RSVP'd immediately and confirmed I would be attending. My parents are divorced, and my dad is bringing his girlfriend, and my mom is attending with her husband. Everyone seemed fine with the setup. About a week after the invitations went out, Megan texted me. She said that Ryan's side of the family had requested that kids be allowed, and she had agreed to allow a few children, but only the immediate children of close family. I thought that was fine, but then she mentioned, almost casually, that they were expanding the guest list by about 20 more people, distant cousins, coworkers, friends from high school, etc., and that because of space limitations, they had to rearrange seating. Here's the kicker. She wanted me to give up my table assignment for my fiancé and me because they were saving a spot for Ryan's college roommate and his girlfriend. She said it wouldn't be a problem and that it was just a table change, but it was a really inconvenient table for me. At the back of the venue, next to people I didn't know, and away from my parents who I normally sit with. I was annoyed. I told her I felt like I was being punished for RSVPing early and that I had already made plans based on the original seating. She replied with something along the lines of, "It's just a table, it's not a big deal, and honestly, if you can't be flexible, maybe you shouldn't come." That last part really set me off. I tried to reason with her, explaining that this felt like a pattern. Growing up, she always got what she wanted, and other people had to adjust. But she insisted that I was overreacting and that I needed to be gracious. I discussed it with my parents. My mom said I should just let it go for Megan's sake, and my dad said it was ridiculous to make me move, but he also hinted that I shouldn't create drama. I thought about it for a few days, and ultimately, I decided I couldn't attend the wedding under those conditions. It felt disrespectful and inconsiderate, and I realized that attending might actually cause more stress for me than happiness for her. I sent her a long text explaining why I couldn't attend. I tried to be calm, but firm. I told her I loved her and wanted her to have a beautiful day, but that I could not participate in a wedding where my presence was treated as optional or my seating was considered negotiable. I suggested we celebrate together afterward, and that I'd love to see photos and hear about the day, but I couldn't be there in person. Her response was intense. She called me selfish, immature, and accused me of holding grudges from childhood. She told me that I was overreacting and that I was ruining her special day over something trivial. She even said that she couldn't believe I would skip my own sister's wedding over a table. My parents tried to mediate, but Megan refused to talk to them on the phone with me present. She's been sending mutual friends messages asking if they think I'm in the wrong. Since then, I've been bombarded with messages from extended family members asking why I'm not attending and implying that I'm being dramatic. I know they're just curious, but it's exhausting. I've also had people suggest I could compromise and come, but sit at a different table, but I genuinely feel that doing so would send a message that it's okay for her to disregard my feelings. I know some people will say I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, and maybe I am. But to me, this is the culmination of years of feeling like Megan's wants always come first, and my feelings always take a back seat. I'm not trying to ruin her wedding. I just can't participate in a situation that makes me feel disrespected and overlooked. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding over a last-minute guest list and seating change. Character count, 6,271. AITA for refusing to let my brother bring his girlfriend to our family Christmas, even though she's technically family now. So this is going to be a bit long, but I want to give all the context so you can judge fairly. I, 32F, have a younger brother, Jason, 28M, and we've always been close. Our parents are divorced. Mom remarried a few years ago and has her own extended family, while Dad lives alone. Traditionally, we've always spent Christmas at my mom's house with her side of the family, including her husband, stepkids, and a few cousins. For the most part, it's been a warm, albeit slightly chaotic tradition. Now, Jason has been dating this woman, Samantha, 27F, for about a year. When I first met her, she seemed nice enough, but I quickly started noticing some things. She's incredibly high maintenance and expects a lot of attention. For instance, she'll complain if someone doesn't like or comment on her social media posts. She makes passive-aggressive remarks when she doesn't get her way, and she constantly interrupts conversations to insert her own stories. I tried to ignore it at first, thinking maybe I was just being sensitive, but it got worse over time. Fast forward to a couple of months ago, our mom mentioned that she wanted to have a pre-Christmas dinner at her place. She invited Jason and Samantha, and I offered to help with decorations and prepping the food. When I arrived, Samantha immediately started complaining about the menu, saying it wasn't up to her standards and asking if we could change a few dishes. I tried to be polite, but I explained that the menu had been planned for weeks, and we couldn't just change it last minute. She huffed, rolled her eyes, and went to the living room, loudly proclaiming that she couldn't believe people eat like peasants. It was humiliating. Then came the second incident. She decided to help with decorating. Instead of following the theme we'd carefully picked, she rearranged everything, pushed aside our handmade ornaments, and even broke one of my favorite pieces, a small glass angel my grandmother had given me. I was upset, but my mom tried to smooth things over, saying she's just trying to help. Samantha, on the other hand, acted like nothing had happened and continued to boss everyone around. The tipping point came when she started inviting people to the dinner without asking anyone else. She sent a text to my mom's friends saying, "We're having a fun, festive dinner, and everyone should come. Don't worry, I'll handle the snacks." My mom was furious because she hadn't asked anyone yet, and we had already planned for a small, intimate gathering. I confronted Samantha politely, asking her to consult with my mom before inviting strangers. She laughed and said, "It's Christmas. You can't control who has fun." That night, she made multiple comments about how our family was stuck in the past and needed to loosen up. After this, I had a long talk with Jason. I told him I didn't feel comfortable having Samantha at Christmas because of how she had behaved. I explained it wasn't personal against him, but her past actions made me worry she'd ruin the day. Jason was incredibly upset. He said that Samantha is now part of the family and that excluding her would be cruel. He also mentioned that our parents would probably back him up and that I was overreacting. I tried reasoning with him, offering a compromise. I suggested that Samantha could join for a smaller family dinner or perhaps a New Year's celebration, but Christmas itself was sacred to me and I didn't want it ruined. He refused, claiming that I was controlling and making everyone pick sides. Last week, my mom emailed the family about Christmas plans. I left Samantha's name off the RSVP list, knowing she could technically attend if she wanted, but I was not going to seat her or prepare anything special. The email caused immediate drama. Jason called me, shouting that I was being ridiculous and selfish and that I was the reason our family fights. My mom also called, very disappointed, saying she wished I would just let Samantha come and that I was being harsh. Even my dad weighed in, saying it's too bad to exclude someone Jason loves. Here's where it gets complicated. I started receiving messages from extended family members asking if I was serious about not letting Samantha attend. A few of them said they agreed with me, but most were confused and urged me to compromise. Jason sent me a very long text saying, "I don't know how you can call yourself family and act like this. She's polite, she's lovely, and you're imagining problems where there are none." I tried to explain that polite doesn't describe someone who constantly undermines and insults everyone else, but he wouldn't hear it. Now, I feel awful. Part of me thinks I'm being a brat for trying to control a family event. Another part of me feels like it's justified to protect the holiday atmosphere. My mom keeps hinting that if I don't back down, I might end up sitting out Christmas entirely. Jason has been giving me the silent treatment, and Samantha keeps sending me passive-aggressive messages like, "Hope you're ready for a lonely Christmas." I've thought about trying therapy or mediation with the family, but Christmas is only a few weeks away, and I'm not sure if it's too late. At the same time, I don't want to cave because I know the day could turn into a disaster if Samantha is around. I've tried imagining ways to compromise, but every option I come up with still leaves me feeling anxious and disrespected. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend attend our family Christmas, even though she's now technically part of the family. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at my house after a fight, even though it caused a massive family argument. So, some background first. I, 28F, live in a medium-sized city and have my own apartment. I've always had a decent relationship with my sister, Emily, 26F, but things have been tense ever since she started dating her current boyfriend, Mark, 30M. Mark is charming in public, but over time I started noticing some controlling and dismissive behavior, especially toward Emily. I tried to ignore it because, well, it's her relationship and I don't want to meddle too much. A few weeks ago, Emily and Mark had a huge fight. From what I gathered, it was about him making decisions for her without asking, like canceling plans with her friends and insisting she work extra shifts. Emily was clearly upset and reached out to me late one night, saying she needed to get out of the house for a while and asked if she could stay with me. Naturally, I said yes. I figured a night or two wouldn't hurt, and it was her home life that was toxic in that moment, not mine. When Emily arrived, she was tearful and clearly shaken. I made her tea, gave her some space, and we talked. She vented about Mark and said she wasn't sure if she could keep being with him. I listened, comforted her, and tried not to judge. That night, she stayed over in my guest room, and everything seemed fine. The next morning, she asked if Mark could come over to talk things out. I immediately hesitated because I wasn't sure how I felt about him being in my apartment, given the behavior I'd seen. I expressed my concerns gently, saying I wasn't comfortable having him over until I knew the situation was calmer. Emily got upset, saying I was being unfair and that Mark just wanted to apologize. I explained that my house is my safe space and I didn't want anyone over who made me uncomfortable, regardless of who they were. She reluctantly agreed to let him wait outside while we talked. Well, it didn't go smoothly. Mark insisted on coming in anyway, and when I said no, he tried to argue that I was splitting the family apart and making things worse. I stood firm, told him he wasn't welcome, and he eventually left after Emily begged him to go. But by this point, things had escalated. Emily was crying again, telling me I was being unreasonable and that our parents would support Mark if I didn't let him stay. I tried explaining my boundaries, but she stormed out and drove back to her apartment, leaving me feeling frustrated and hurt. The next day, my parents called me, furious. Apparently, Emily had told them I refused to let Mark come inside to make amends and painted me as being selfish and controlling. They said I was interfering in their family and needed to apologize. I explained my side calmly, emphasizing that I was protecting my home and personal boundaries. My dad accused me of choosing sides and turning Emily against the family. My mom said I should have just let him in to avoid drama. I reminded them that Emily was the one staying over and she was upset. It wasn't about me versus him. It was about comfort and safety. They said I was overreacting and being dramatic. After that call, Emily texted me. She said she felt abandoned and accused me of picking her fights with Mark for her. I tried to respond gently, but she blocked me before I could fully explain. Family group chats have since become tense. My aunt and uncle reached out to say they understood my perspective, but most of my immediate family are angry at me for making a mountain out of a molehill. Here's where I'm confused. On one hand, I think I did the right thing. I set a boundary in my own home, protected myself from a person I don't feel safe with, and didn't force Emily to choose between me and Mark. On the other hand, I see my parents' point that maybe I could have been more accommodating. But honestly, I didn't feel safe or comfortable letting someone I distrust into my space just because it might smooth things over with the rest of the family. I'm torn because the fallout has been massive. My sister and I aren't talking, my parents are angry, and I feel like I'm being punished for protecting my own home. I thought families were supposed to respect boundaries, especially when it's about personal space and safety, but now I'm second-guessing myself because everyone else seems to think I'm the villain. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at my house after their fight, even though it caused a huge family argument. AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in with me after she abandoned her life and now wants me to rescue her. So, this is going to be a long one, and I'm prepared for people to think I'm heartless. I'll try to explain everything as clearly as possible. I, 32M, have a younger sister, Clara, 28F, who has always been the kind of person who jumps from one dramatic situation to another without much planning. Growing up, she was always the adventurous one while I was the responsible one. I worked my way through college, got a stable job, and eventually bought a small condo downtown. Clara, on the other hand, never held a steady job for more than a year, bounced between relationships, and has a habit of moving cities every couple of years on a whim. 2 years ago, Clara got involved with a guy she met online. She decided to move across the country to be with him, leaving behind a job she had only just started, her small apartment, and even some of her pets because she couldn't take care of them in transit. I was upset, but I supported her in my own way, which basically meant letting her crash on my couch for a few days before she left so she could pack and figure things out. I honestly thought this would be one of her short-lived adventures, but she insisted she was serious this time. Fast forward to now. Clara called me last week, sobbing, saying that the relationship ended badly. She has no money, her ex kicked her out, and she doesn't know where to go. She asked if she could move back in with me for a little while until she gets back on her feet. I live in a one-bedroom condo, and the thought of having her live with me indefinitely makes me extremely anxious. She's told me before she tends to overstay her welcome with friends and family. And I know this is the kind of situation where a little while could easily turn into months. I explained to her that while I sympathize with her situation, my condo isn't set up for 2 adults, I work long hours, and I need a stable and quiet environment. I suggested she look for short-term rental, reach out to local shelters if needed, or stay with other relatives who live in her city. She immediately got very defensive and started accusing me of not being family and only caring about myself. She reminded me that I always had a more stable life, and I should help her now, that she needs it. I told her again that I'm willing to help in practical ways, like helping her look for apartments, helping with moving costs if I can, or even letting her store some belongings here temporarily, but I simply can't have her living in my condo. This escalated into a 3-day argument over text and phone calls. She accused me of being selfish, heartless, and even said that I don't actually love her as a sister. I finally decided to block her calls for a bit because I was getting overwhelmed, and she then sent a series of messages to our family group chat asking why I'm refusing to help her. Apparently, my parents got involved and called me unreasonable and cold. They said I should remember she's family, and that people in crisis deserve support from family. I explained to them my boundaries and the fact that I'm not a hotel, but they don't see it my way. Clara, predictably, is now saying she hates me and doesn't want to speak to me ever again, and she's telling everyone that I left her in the cold. Here's the kicker. I do want to help Clara, but not in a way that sacrifices my mental health, stability, or my small living space. I've offered financial help within reason, connections to affordable housing, and emotional support over the phone or in public spaces, but none of that seems good enough for her. My parents think I'm the villain because she's in crisis, and they've been subtly guilt-tripping me about it nonstop. I honestly feel like I'm being punished for setting reasonable boundaries, and I'm worried this will completely destroy my relationship with my sister. I'm starting to question whether people are right about me being heartless, but I also know that if I give in, it will likely make the situation worse for both of us in the long run. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in after she abandoned her life and expecting me to be her safety net, even though I'm offering other forms of support. Character count, 6,496 if you want. I can also write a slightly longer version that hits the full 7,000 character mark with more dialogue and tension escalation. Do you want me to do that? Hey friends, if you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. We genuinely want to know what you enjoy and what we can improve. What did you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future uploads? Your feedback helps us get better every day. Thanks for sticking with us. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior toward my partner. So, I, 29F, have a younger sister, Emily, 26F, who is getting married next month. Growing up, we were very close, but in the last few years, things have been tense because of her relationship choices. When Emily started dating her now fiancé, Mark, 30M, I tried to be supportive. I wanted to maintain a healthy sibling relationship and hoped he'd grow on me. Unfortunately, the more I interacted with him, the more I felt uneasy. My partner, Sam, 31M, has been my rock for the past 5 years. He's kind, intelligent, and genuinely a good person. Whenever Mark and Sam have met, Mark has made several passive-aggressive comments about Sam's career and choices. For context, Sam is a freelance illustrator, and Mark has a corporate job in finance. On several occasions, Mark has openly questioned Sam's stability and the practicality of his life choices in front of me and other family members. One particular incident stood out. At a family barbecue last summer, Mark loudly asked if Sam could afford to pay for a dinner out without borrowing from me, despite Sam quietly offering to pay for everyone's drinks. It was embarrassing. I tried to shrug it off, but it stung Sam deeply. Leading up to the wedding, Emily asked me to help her with planning. I agreed initially because I wanted to be supportive. However, during one planning session, Mark started criticizing every small thing I suggested, even those unrelated to the wedding, like my decorating ideas for her bridal shower. I was frustrated, but kept my composure. Later, I confided in Sam about the session, and he reminded me that my feelings are valid and that I shouldn't feel guilty for standing my ground. A few weeks ago, Emily sent me the wedding itinerary and specifically asked that Sam and I arrive early to help with setup. The instructions included tasks like arranging centerpieces, coordinating with vendors, and helping with seating arrangements. Normally, I wouldn't mind, but knowing Mark would be there and likely making snide comments, I started feeling anxious. I told Emily I was worried about Mark's behavior and that I wasn't comfortable attending the wedding if I had to deal with him. She became defensive, claiming I was overreacting and projecting my insecurities onto Mark. I tried to explain that this isn't about me being insecure, but about consistent disrespect and inappropriate comments towards Sam. Emily said I was being selfish and that my absence would ruin her big day. She even said that if Sam came, she would still expect me there, which put me in a really awkward position because she was essentially asking me to choose between supporting her and protecting my partner from verbal attacks. I stood my ground and told her that attending under those circumstances would make me miserable and that I wouldn't put Sam in that situation. She accused me of holding a grudge against her fiancé, which, in a way, I guess I am, but it's based on repeated harmful behavior, not personal spite. After our argument, I posted about my dilemma in a private family group chat to see if anyone else felt the same way. Most of the responses were mixed. My mom said that she understands my feelings, but that family events require grace under pressure, and that Emily is going to be upset regardless. My dad was more supportive, acknowledging that Mark's behavior has been inappropriate and that Sam should not feel attacked. My cousins largely sided with Emily, suggesting that I should suck it up for the sake of family harmony. Sam has been incredibly supportive, and we've talked at length about the potential fallout. He agrees that attending the wedding as things stand would be uncomfortable and possibly toxic for us. We've even considered attending only the ceremony and leaving before the reception to minimize interaction, but Emily made it clear that she would notice our absence and confront us. Since then, I've been trying to figure out a compromise, but it feels like Emily is refusing to acknowledge Mark's behavior and that she expects me to ignore it for her sake. I'm stuck feeling guilty because, on one hand, I don't want to ruin my sister's wedding, but on the other, I feel strongly that my partner's dignity and our mental well-being come first. I haven't told anyone in the extended family yet because I anticipate backlash, but I want to stand by my principles. I've also worried that skipping the wedding could permanently damage my relationship with Emily. even though I feel like attending under these conditions would be worse. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's repeated disrespect toward my partner, even though she sees it as overreacting? AITA for refusing to let my sister stay in my house after she had a huge falling out with her boyfriend, even though our parents think I should? So, this is going to be a bit long, but I really need to get this off my chest. I, 32M, have a younger sister, Laura, who is 29. We've always been close growing up, but our personalities are very different. I'm the practical, responsible one who likes structure and planning, whereas Laura is more spontaneous and tends to make decisions in the heat of the moment. Over the years, this difference has led to some friction, but we've always been there for each other when it really matters. About 6 months ago, Laura started dating a guy named Evan. Initially, he seemed fine, but as time went on, I started noticing some red flags. He was controlling, often dismissive of Laura's feelings, and she seemed to change her behavior around him to avoid arguments. I voiced my concerns once or twice, but she assured me that it was fine and that I was overreacting. I respected her choice because, ultimately, she's an adult. Fast forward to last weekend. Laura called me in tears. She had had a huge fight with Evan, which apparently escalated to him, saying some incredibly hurtful things, including that she would never succeed in her career and that she should just move back in with our parents because she wasn't capable of handling life on her own. She was devastated and asked if she could stay at my place for a few days until she figured things out. Here's the thing. I live alone in a small one-bedroom apartment, and I had already made plans to have a quiet week at home to decompress from a particularly stressful project at work. My apartment is not really set up to accommodate another adult comfortably, and I also knew that having her here in her current emotional state would mean constant crying, venting, and a lot of stress for both of us. I suggested instead that she stay with our parents for a few days, or maybe even a hotel, and that we could spend time together at my place for short periods so I could support her without it being overwhelming for me. She got upset, saying that I was being selfish and that my apartment is her home too in a sense, because we're family. She insisted that I should drop everything to help her. I refused, explaining that I was happy to help in other ways. She could come over for dinner, we could go out for coffee, I could listen to her vent on the phone, but that having her stay in my apartment right now would be too stressful for me. Then our parents got involved. They called me and basically said I was being cruel and unsympathetic, that she was my sister and family should help each other, and that I had a moral obligation to let her stay. I explained my perspective calmly, but they accused me of not caring about her well-being and of letting my own comfort come before family. They also said that I would regret it if something happened and I hadn't stepped up. I try to point out that she's 29 years old and capable of making other arrangements, and that I was not refusing to help her entirely. I just wanted to do it in a way that wouldn't negatively impact either of us, but they wouldn't listen. Laura has been texting me nonstop since then, alternating between pleading, guilt-tripping, and passive-aggressive comments about how I must not love her, and I guess family isn't supposed to matter. I've been responding politely, reiterating my boundaries and offering alternatives, but I feel like I'm being painted as the villain. I honestly feel conflicted. On one hand, she's my sister, she's in a vulnerable place, and I do want to help her. On the other hand, she's asking me to uproot my life, put aside my own mental health, and potentially make both of us miserable for several days, which I think is unreasonable. I've helped her in the past, driving her to appointments, helping with her car when it broke down, and even lending her money when she needed it. But I also feel like this is different. This is about a personal boundary, and I don't think I should be shamed for protecting my mental health. Some friends I've talked to say that I'm not wrong, that it's okay to set boundaries even with family, and that helping someone doesn't mean sacrificing your well-being. Others say I should just let her stay for a few days, and it wouldn't kill me to be uncomfortable for a little while to support my sister. I'm trying to be empathetic, but every time I think about her moving in, I feel my stress level spike, and I know I won't be able to function properly at work or maintain my own routine. I also worry that if I cave now, she'll come to expect this every time she has a problem, which could lead to a pattern I'm not comfortable with. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay in my apartment after a fight with her boyfriend, even though our parents think I should. Character count, 6,395. AITA for refusing to let my stepsister's children live with me after her temporary emergency turned into a permanent stay. I, 34F, have been married to my husband, Dan, 36M, for 8 years. Dan has a daughter, Lily, 10F, from a previous relationship, and before we met, I had no children of my own. When we got married, we agreed that we would never have more kids ourselves for various reasons, including my health issues and lifestyle preferences. So we've poured all our energy into providing a good life for Lily. Dan has a younger sister, Sarah, 32F. She has 3 kids, Mia, 8F, Ben, 6M, and Sam, 3M. Sarah has always been, let's say, somewhat unreliable when it comes to parenting. She struggled with keeping steady work and managing bills, and she tends to make a lot of impulsive decisions. My relationship with Sarah has always been strained because of her chaotic nature and her constant expectation that I or Dan would step in to fix her messes. Despite this, I've tried to maintain a polite and neutral relationship for Lily's sake. About a year ago, Sarah called Dan in a panic. She had gotten evicted due to a dispute with her landlord and claimed she had nowhere for her kids to go. She asked if we could temporarily take them in for a week or 2 while she got her life sorted out. Dan, wanting to help, agreed, but he emphasized that this would be temporary. I reluctantly agreed too, under the understanding that it was a short-term solution. The first week was fine, a bit chaotic but manageable. I had to adjust my routines and take on extra responsibilities, but I kept telling myself it was just a week. 2 weeks turned into a month. Then it became 2 months. Every time we brought up the idea of them going back home, Sarah would come up with a new excuse. She couldn't find an apartment. Her job fell through. She needed to finish a training course. Dan kept insisting that we were helping family, but I was exhausted. The kids are sweet but high energy, and managing 3 of them on top of Lily was draining, especially since 2 of them have special educational needs that require extra attention. Things started to get tense when Sarah stopped checking in entirely. She would drop the kids off and leave for days at a time without explanation, expecting us to provide meals, school transportation, and basically full-time childcare without any contribution from her. I tried to talk to Dan about boundaries, but he always brushed it off, saying, "It's just temporary. She's family." I felt like my life was being held hostage by Sarah's irresponsibility. After 6 months of this, I reached my breaking point. I told Dan that I could not continue to host the kids indefinitely. I said we would continue to support them financially and help with school and childcare, but they could not live with us permanently. I explained that this wasn't a reflection on the kids. They are sweet and polite, but it was unsustainable for our family structure and my mental health. Dan was frustrated, but eventually agreed to talk to Sarah about finding alternative housing for her kids. Sarah, unsurprisingly, did not take the news well. She accused me of being selfish and cruel, claiming that I was prioritizing my comfort over her children's well-being. She said that if she had to live on the streets with her kids, it would be my fault because I refused to help. Dan and I had a massive fight when he realized he was going to have to enforce boundaries with his sister. He said I was lacking compassion and not being family enough. I countered that being compassionate does not mean letting someone take over your home for an indefinite period, and that helping doesn't mean destroying your own household stability. Things escalated further when Sarah involved her extended family. Suddenly, I was being sent texts from cousins and aunts calling me heartless, selfish, and accusing me of breaking up the family by refusing to let the kids stay. I started to receive passive-aggressive messages on social media about how I clearly don't care about children in need. Meanwhile, Dan has been stuck in the middle, trying to keep the peace, but also stressed by our home situation. Lily has picked up on all of this tension and has become more withdrawn. Last month, Sarah found a new place, but it's in another city, and she expects us to drive the kids there every weekend. I told Dan I'm fine contributing to transport occasionally, but cannot commit to weekly long drives indefinitely. Sarah exploded at this, accusing me of being controlling and saying that I'm punishing the children for her mistakes. Dan is frustrated but understands my point. However, he is still trying to keep the peace, and has guilt tripped me into feeling responsible for the kids' feelings. I feel like I've been painted as the villain here, but from my perspective, I'm protecting my household and my marriage. I've offered financial support, school support, emotional support, and occasional childcare, but the idea that I should sacrifice my home and mental health indefinitely is unfair. I want to maintain a relationship with my stepniece and nephews, but I refuse to let them live with us permanently. Dan and I have had repeated discussions, and he supports me in principle, but the family drama makes it messy. So here's where I stand. I believe I am justified in setting boundaries. I am willing to help in reasonable ways, but allowing Sarah's poor choices to disrupt my life and my stepdaughter's life indefinitely is not something I can accept. The problem is that almost everyone in Sarah's orbit seems to think I'm the villain for drawing a line. Dan is caught in the middle, and I'm starting to resent him for the way the family treats me, even though he personally agrees with me. AITA for refusing to let my stepsister's children live with me permanently after her repeated temporary emergencies. Character count, 6,588 if you want. I can also craft a second version that's even more emotionally intense and dramatic, similar to some of the top-voted AITA posts that generate thousands of comments. This one is more realistic/relatable, but the other could feel even more like a viral Reddit post. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to lend my car to my friend after she got a DUI, even though she's insisting it's an emergency. I, 29F, have been friends with Samantha, 28F, since college. We've been close for years, and, generally, I like to help my friends when they're in need. That said, I also have certain boundaries when it comes to my safety, my property, and my own responsibilities. Recently, we had a major falling out, and now I'm questioning if I'm actually in the wrong here. A few months ago, Samantha got a DUI. She was out with friends, admittedly drank more than she should have, and ended up getting pulled over. Luckily, no one was hurt, but she did lose her license for 6 months. I was sympathetic and supported her emotionally, but I made it clear that I could not drive her around all the time because I have my own life, work schedule, and responsibilities. I suggested ride shares, public transportation, and asking other friends with more flexible schedules. I thought that was reasonable, and for the first month or so, things were fine. Fast forward to last week. Samantha called me frantic, saying that her apartment's water heater broke. Her landlord won't fix it immediately, and she can't get anyone else to help her move some heavy furniture out before she switches to a temporary place. She said it was an emergency and begged me to lend her my car for a few hours so she could drive to her storage unit and then to her temporary apartment. I immediately said no. First, I don't lend my car to anyone without a valid driver's license and insurance in their name. Second, I was worried about liability. If she got pulled over or into an accident while using my car, even for a legitimate emergency, it would be my responsibility. Third, I have work early the next morning and can't risk my car being late back, damaged, or unavailable. I suggested she call a moving company or rent a truck from a service that allows unlicensed drivers, or see if her landlord can help cover the cost temporarily. Samantha completely lost it. She accused me of being selfish and said I was punishing her for a mistake that I had already forgiven. She said this is exactly why she doesn't ask for help from anyone else, because I'm cold and unhelpful. I try to explain calmly that it's not about punishment. It's about boundaries and safety. I said I was happy to help in other ways, like helping her pack boxes in my place, coordinating rides with someone else who could drive, or even driving with her while I stayed in control of the vehicle, but that lending her my car was not something I could do. This blew up further when she started texting me repeatedly over the next 2 days. She sent messages like, "I can't believe you won't help me. I thought friends were supposed to have each other's backs, and I guess I know where I stand now." She even posted a vague, emotional Instagram story that seemed clearly directed at me. A few mutual friends reached out to me privately, saying that maybe I should reconsider, that it's just a temporary thing, and that she's really in trouble. I understand she's in a tough spot, but the more I think about it, the more I feel like giving in would not only put me at risk legally and financially, but also set a precedent where she assumes I'll bend my rules whenever she needs me. I did offer alternative solutions repeatedly. I suggested she could rent a car or moving van from a local service that allows her to pay for short-term use. Ask other friends or family with valid licenses if they could help for a few hours. Hire movers for a single day, splitting the cost if necessary. Let me help her pack, lift lighter items, and organize logistics so she could still get the work done without driving. None of these were acceptable to her. She keeps insisting it's an emergency and implying that I don't care about her well-being. I feel frustrated and honestly a little hurt because I have supported her in many ways over the years, including helping her move in the past, lending her money when she was in a tough spot, and being there when she had mental health struggles. But this feels different. I can't ignore the fact that she drove drunk, lost her license, and is now asking me to violate rules and risk my safety and finances for her convenience. Some of my friends say I'm justified, that everyone has boundaries, and that lending her the car would be irresponsible. Others say I should just do it this one time because it's a genuine emergency and she has no other options. I honestly feel like if I give in, I'll be reinforcing that she can rely on me to bend rules for her, and I don't want that. I also worry that if she continues this pattern, it could damage our friendship permanently, even though I genuinely care about her. I'm trying to support her emotionally and help her problem solve, but she sees it as rejection. At this point, I'm just exhausted by the pressure and the guilt trips, and I can't tell if I'm actually being selfish or if I'm standing up for a reasonable boundary. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to lend my car to my friend who lost her license after a DUI. Even though she insists it's an emergency? Character count, 6,272. AITA for refusing to let my brother move back in after he essentially sabotaged his own life. So some context. I, 33M, live in a medium-sized city with my wife, Laura, 31F, and our 2 kids, ages 6 and 4. We've been homeowners for 5 years, and honestly, we worked really hard to get to this point. My younger brother, Jake, 28M, has always been the free spirit of the family. He's smart and charismatic, but he's also wildly irresponsible when it comes to money, commitments, and basic adulting. He's the kind of person who's charming at parties and fun to be around. But leave him alone for a month, and his apartment will be trashed, his bills unpaid, and he'll owe money to at least 3 different friends. A few months ago, Jake moved across the country for a job opportunity that he swore would change his life. He was super excited, and I supported him, even gave him a small loan to help cover initial expenses. I trusted that this would be the turning point for him. It was not. Within 2 months, he'd been fired for being late repeatedly, missed deadlines, and basically ignoring his manager's instructions. I tried talking to him, offering advice, and helping him look for other work, but he insisted he'd figure it out. Fast forward a month, and he calls me crying, saying he's broke, has no place to stay, and wants to move back in with us. I was shocked because, at this point, he had burned through the loan I gave him, had racked up some small debts, and had made no real effort to secure employment. I told him I wasn't comfortable with him moving in, but I would help him in other ways, like helping him find a cheap sublet, giving him references, and even covering some moving costs if he found a place. He got extremely angry and accused me of abandoning him and said I didn't really care about family. We argued for hours. He brought up the fact that we'd always helped him in the past, paying for car repairs, giving him rides, letting him crash on our couch when he had nowhere else. But I pointed out that all of that happened while he was actively trying to stabilize his life. This time, he had literally done nothing except assume we'd swoop in and bail him out. Laura sided with me, saying that our house is not a free storage unit for bad decisions, and we needed to protect our kids' stability. Jake refused to listen and started sending daily messages that got progressively hostile. He accused me of being selfish and heartless. My parents, however, called me to say that I was being unreasonable and that family should always help each other. I tried to explain that there's a difference between helping someone who's actively working to fix their life and enabling someone who refuses to take responsibility, but they didn't get it. About a week later, he tried to show up at our house unannounced. Laura and I were both home with the kids, and I calmly told him that he was not welcome and that if he tried to enter, I would call the police. He got in my face, yelling about how I was the worst brother ever, then stormed off. I didn't call the police because I didn't want to escalate things, but we did change the locks on the doors anyway. Since then, Jake has been posting on social media about how evil my brother and his wife are for not helping him. He's framed it as me kicking him out when he had nowhere else to go, completely ignoring the months he spent being irresponsible and refusing to find a job. Mutual friends and some extended family have reached out, asking me if I'm sure I'm doing the right thing. And the fact that everyone has such strong opinions is making me second-guess myself. Here's the kicker. One of his old friends from the city he moved to recently reached out to me privately. They told me that Jake had actually been fired from the first job because he was involved in some minor theft at the workplace and lied to HR to cover it up. Apparently, he's been bouncing from one temporary living situation to another, blaming everyone else for his failures. This friend said that letting him move back in with me would just be a temporary fix before the same cycle repeated itself. I haven't told my parents or anyone else about this part because I feel like it will just make me look harsh, but it has honestly reinforced my decision. Laura fully supports me. We've also spoken with a therapist to make sure we're handling this in a way that's fair but firm. The problem is Jake's continued harassment on social media and through messages is starting to affect me personally. I've blocked him, but I still see posts from mutual friends about the situation, and it's stressful. I keep thinking maybe I should relent, maybe I should just let him stay for a week or two, but every part of me knows that it would just enable him and potentially harm my family's stability. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother move back in. Even though he's effectively homeless and emotionally pressuring me, I feel like I'm being responsible, but everyone else seems to think I'm cruel. AITA for confronting my brother about his family rules after he refused to help my wife during her pregnancy. This all started a few months ago. My wife, Megan, and I are expecting our first child, and as excited as we were, it's been a stressful time. Megan has been having a rough pregnancy with complications that require constant monitoring, and I've been trying to balance work and making sure she has everything she needs. My brother, Ryan, lives about 20 minutes away. We've always had a rocky relationship. Growing up, he was the golden child in our family, successful, charismatic, and never seemed to struggle with anything. I, on the other hand, have always been more introverted and struggled a bit to find my footing. Over the years, he's developed this pattern of subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, reminding me of my shortcomings. Despite that, I've always tried to maintain a cordial relationship because he's still my brother. A few weeks ago, Megan needed to be admitted for observation after a particularly bad morning of nausea and low blood pressure. I called Ryan and asked if he could come by and help me with some of the house chores, like picking up groceries and helping with meals for a few hours. I figured he would be happy to help. He's done similar things for friends and other family members in the past. Instead, he flat out refused. He said, and I quote, "I have my own schedule. If Megan wanted help, she should have planned better. We don't do last-minute favors." I tried to explain that this wasn't last minute and that pregnancy complications aren't exactly something you can plan for, but he just shook his head and said, "Family rules are family rules. You know how it is." I was stunned. I asked him what he meant by family rules, and he explained that in our family, there's an unspoken rule that adults don't inconvenience each other. That means no spontaneous help, no lending money, no babysitting, nothing that interrupts someone's schedule. He insisted that I should have planned better if I wanted help, and that these rules applied to everyone. I admit I was angry, but I tried to remain calm. I explained to him that this was literally a medical emergency and that Megan and I were already overwhelmed. He responded by saying, "You always want exceptions. Why should I break the rules just because you're having a baby? Life doesn't stop for you." I ended the call frustrated and called my mom instead. She was sympathetic and said that Ryan could be harsh sometimes, but that I shouldn't expect him to bend his rules. I was fuming, but I didn't want to escalate things. The next week, Megan had to be hospitalized again, this time for a more serious complication that required bed rest for at least 2 weeks. During this period, I realized I couldn't manage everything alone, so I reached out to Ryan one more time. This time I offered to pay him for a few hours of help, thinking maybe that would incentivize him. He still refused, saying that paying him would violate family principles. According to him, family support should either be spontaneous and mutual or nothing at all. and paying him would somehow make it transactional and wrong. I was beyond frustrated and started questioning our relationship entirely. After the third refusal, I sent him a long text explaining that what he was doing wasn't just unhelpful, it was cruel. I explained the medical situation, how Megan couldn't do basic tasks without help, and how I felt like he was prioritizing some abstract family rules over his own brother and future niece or nephew. He replied with a short message. "I'm not the bad guy here. You're asking me to compromise values I've held for years. Deal with it." This led to a huge blow-up in our family group chat. My parents sided somewhat with him, saying that everyone has boundaries and that I was being too emotional. I argued that he wasn't setting boundaries. He was refusing to help in a time of real need. Things escalated, and now we're barely talking. Megan is angry because she feels unsupported by her own family, and I'm angry because I feel like my brother has turned what should be a loving, supportive relationship into some kind of rigid, moralistic hierarchy. My friends are divided too. Some say I'm right for expecting family to step up in emergencies, while others say I should respect his rules, even if I personally find them absurd. My parents have suggested that maybe I should just accept that Ryan doesn't want to help and focus on other support networks. I'm now left in a situation where my wife is struggling physically and emotionally. I'm stretched thin, and my brother refuses to acknowledge the reality of what's happening. I keep replaying the conversations in my head and wondering if I crossed a line by confronting him so aggressively or if I was justified in calling him out for being so cold. I haven't spoken to him in over a week. My mom says I should apologize for being confrontational, but I don't feel like I did anything wrong. I was simply asking for help in a serious situation. Megan is scared and frustrated because she expected support from family, not rules about how much inconvenience is allowed. So, Reddit, AITA for confronting my brother about his family rules and expecting him to help my wife during her pregnancy. I feel like I'm stuck between standing up for my family and respecting boundaries that seem, frankly, inhumane. The tension has now spread to other extended family members, some of whom are taking his side and others mine, and I can feel this is going to have long-term effects on our relationships. I just want to know if I'm the asshole here or if my brother's principles are truly unreasonable. I don't know how to move forward without causing more drama, and I'd like an honest judgment. Character count, 6702. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée stay at my house after she insulted my family. I, 32F, have always been close with my younger brother, Ben, 29M. We grew up with a very tight-knit family, and while we have our disagreements, we generally respect each other's boundaries. Ben has been dating his fiancée, Sophie, 27F, for about a year now. At first, I liked Sophie. She seemed sweet, funny, and genuinely cared about Ben. However, over the past few months, I've started noticing little things that have made me uncomfortable, mostly concerning how she treats my family and me. A few weeks ago, Ben and Sophie announced they wanted to stay with me and my husband, Tom, 34M, for a long weekend. They said they had no other options due to a last-minute hotel issue near our town. Normally, I would have welcomed them, but something about this felt off. A few days before their arrival, I asked Sophie if she had any dietary restrictions or preferences because I wanted to plan meals accordingly. Her response threw me off. She said, "Honestly, I don't eat normal food. I prefer things that are sophisticated, organic, or from trendy restaurants. I don't want to eat what your family eats. I wouldn't be comfortable." I admit, I was a bit taken aback. My husband and I are not gourmet chefs, but we always try to accommodate guests. I mentioned we could go out for meals or make some adjustments, and she replied, "It's just easier if you do it my way." I felt a twinge of irritation, but tried to keep it to myself. The first night of their stay was tense. Sophie criticized my living room decor, saying it was kind of outdated and not really my aesthetic. Then she told me my kitchen needed a serious refresh because it looked like a college apartment vibe. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe she just had a different taste. Later, she refused the dinner I had prepared, insisting we go to a fancy restaurant instead. I suggested we could split up for meals, but she was insistent that I should make an effort for family bonding. The next morning, Sophie went on a tirade about my family. We were having breakfast, and she started commenting on my parents, who were visiting for the weekend. She said things like, "Wow, your mom still cooks like it's the 90s. Don't they have Pinterest or something? And your dad's jokes are kind of embarrassing, don't you think?" I was stunned. My parents were shocked and hurt, and my husband was fuming but trying to stay calm. I confronted Sophie privately, asking why she would speak about my parents that way. She said, "I'm just being honest. They need to evolve. I can't stand outdated habits." I told her that honesty is fine, but being cruel and insulting isn't acceptable, and that if she couldn't respect my family, perhaps staying at my house wasn't a good idea. Ben, unfortunately, didn't take my side. He said, "Come on, she's just joking. You're overreacting." I explained that this wasn't joking, and that she had repeatedly insulted everyone in subtle and not-so-subtle ways. I also reminded him that she had already criticized my home and meals before even arriving. He rolled his eyes and said, "You need to lighten up. She's stressed from wedding planning." I pointed out that wedding stress didn't give her the right to insult my family in our home. He didn't respond and left the room. By the afternoon, I had made up my mind. I told Sophie that I didn't feel comfortable hosting her under the current circumstances. I offered to help her find a hotel nearby, or even give her some recommendations for Airbnb options. Sophie went ballistic. She accused me of being petty and controlling, and claimed that I was trying to sabotage her relationship with Ben. She even suggested that I was jealous that she was going to be part of the family soon. Ben backed her up, saying I was overreacting and embarrassing him. He stayed firm. I told Ben that if he wanted Sophie to stay in our town, he could make arrangements elsewhere. I was not going to subject my family to another day of insults. The situation escalated when Ben called my husband, Tom, unreasonable for supporting my decision, and even my parents were upset because they didn't want to be caught in the middle. Despite this, I didn't budge. Sophie ended up booking a hotel, but she and Ben haven't spoken to me since, and Ben has been sending passive-aggressive texts about how I ruined their weekend. Now, other family members are starting to weigh in. Some think I overreacted and should have just let them stay, while others agree that Sophie's behavior was inappropriate and that I was justified in setting boundaries. Ben has said he might reconsider our relationship if I don't apologize to Sophie, which feels ridiculous to me since she was the one being disrespectful. I keep going back and forth in my head. On one hand, I feel justified because Sophie insulted my home and family repeatedly. On the other hand, I keep wondering if I'm being too rigid and maybe I could have handled it differently, like talking to her before she arrived or making small compromises. But honestly, her attitude felt toxic and I didn't want to enable it. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée stay at my house after she insulted my family? Character count, 6,462 if you want. I can also craft an even longer, more dramatic version that hits closer to 7,000 characters with extra family tension, friends' opinions, and wedding planning drama to make it feel more like a viral Reddit story. That version would feel really storytime style. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding gift after he insulted me in front of our family? I, 31F, have a younger brother, Alex, who is 28. Growing up, we had a typical sibling relationship. Occasional fights, lots of teasing, but generally supportive. Our parents have always emphasized family loyalty and generosity, and I've tried to live by that. I have a decent job, while Alex has had a rougher path, bouncing between jobs and sometimes making questionable financial decisions. I've tried to support him in the past, lending money or helping with career advice when asked. A few weeks ago, Alex got engaged to his fiancée, Hannah, and started planning their wedding. I was genuinely happy for them and wanted to be part of their special day. Alex and I had dinner together. I asked about their registry. They had a mix of small practical items and a few larger items, and I decided I would contribute a significant gift, something that would be meaningful and show my support. I even asked our parents for suggestions to make sure it aligned with their wishes. Fast forward to last weekend, when Alex's engagement party was held. The event was in a restaurant with around 50 family members and close friends. Most of the night was fine, but then something happened that completely took me off guard. During a conversation with several family members, Alex started talking about how he and Hannah are planning their wedding. He then casually said, in front of everyone, that some of his guests were being cheap and that some people think giving a card with $50 is enough when a meaningful gift would cost hundreds. Then he specifically looked at me and said, and some people just don't understand how weddings work and expect their gift to be noticed no matter how little they spend. You know who I mean. I was shocked. I had not yet bought their gift, but I was planning to give something substantial, well above what I felt was expected, and I had asked for guidance on what would be appreciated. I tried to laugh it off and said, I think your parents might have some ideas about what works. He ignored that and continued, talking about how some family members are unreliable and that he hopes they don't show up empty-handed or with something meaningless. I felt humiliated, especially because the conversation included several extended family members and friends who had no idea about the amount I was planning to spend. I left the party early because I was upset and embarrassed. I messaged Alex the next day, asking if he could clarify what he meant, and I got a dismissive reply. Relax, I was just joking. Don't make everything about yourself. You'll give whatever you want or nothing. Your choice. I explained that it wasn't funny and that I felt insulted in front of everyone. I also told him that I was reconsidering the gift because of how he treated me. He responded with, if you want to be petty, go ahead. But don't act like I'm the bad guy here. I decided not to purchase a gift at this point. I have offered to help in other ways, like helping with wedding planning, offering my home for pre-wedding events, and helping coordinate logistics, but I am not sending a gift after being publicly insulted. Our parents found out and are upset with me. They said I should forgive him, that it was a joke, and that weddings are about family coming together. They also said that my refusal to give a gift will create unnecessary tension and reflect poorly on me. I tried to explain my perspective, that it wasn't about money, it was about respect and how he publicly shamed me. But they argue that I'm overreacting. Some friends have said I'm justified, that no one should be humiliated in front of family like that, and that a gift is not mandatory, especially under these circumstances. Others say I should still give a gift to maintain family harmony, and that weddings are special occasions where it's better to let small slights slide. I feel conflicted because I genuinely want Alex to have a happy wedding, but I also don't want to be treated with disrespect or have my generosity assumed to be insufficient. Adding to my frustration, Hannah hasn't said anything directly to me. I don't know if she even knows about the comment, and I'm hesitant to reach out because I don't want to involve her unnecessarily in a conflict she may not have caused. Meanwhile, Alex has started posting pictures and updates about wedding planning on social media, and I feel like he's publicly showing off while I'm dealing with this humiliation. I've considered talking to Alex in person to clarify and maybe reconcile, but I'm worried he won't take responsibility and that this will become an ongoing issue leading up to the wedding. I also don't want to be forced into giving a gift just to avoid family drama, which feels unfair. I'm trying to navigate the balance between family expectations, personal boundaries, and genuine feelings of being hurt. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding gift after he insulted me in front of our family. Even though our parents think I should? Character count, 6,416. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss new uploads. And feel free to leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean the world to me. See you in the next video.